Hi, folks. So, last Sunday we went and introduced to the second phase of faith. Second phase of faith is leaving the comfort of the ravine. The ravine provided one thing, not just the opportunity for that dependence on God, internal work in your own heart, but it really brought about something cool in that it was safe for him.
That's right.
He was hidden out.
Yeah.
He was in a hiding place. And now God's going to disturb that.
Mm-hmm.
And he dries up the brook, and then he gives them a command. So we talked about this next phase being the phase of uncertainty, insecurity, and that this is actually the ground that God becomes that dependence you learned before in the ravine, that time of work in you. Now it's going to be tested. Right. So now your faith moves from the test of that, to the test of actual real world risk. Right. And so he's entering into that. I'm going to read just a few portions that tell us the story. Verse 7 of 1 Kings 17. Sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. I have commanded a widow in that place to supply you with food. All right. I'm going to introduce the CPR again. We talked about it yesterday. By the way, CPR is meant to start your spiritual heart. Mm-hmm. So here's how you start your spiritual heart. God brings a command. He brings a promise. You take the risk. Right. And it's going to start your heart and get it going. And we see that with this guy again. Mm-hmm.
As usual, it's a little piece of scripture that you could just kind of read through, but there's so much in it. So as you said, for him, the ravine did provide this safety. And during that time, God was doing a great work in him, getting this faith journey going. But really, is it faith unless we get a chance to practice it? And if we're secure in everything that we've been blessed with and provided with, then there is really no need for faith. So God's about to give him a command and a promise. And like you said, he's got to take the risk.
Yeah. And the first thing I notice about this is, and we discussed this last week, the ravines that God has for us in life are temporary. They're not meant to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be elongated. But it's important that we allow him to do the building into us as we go through that. Otherwise, once the brook dried up, where is there to go?
That's right.
Right? And that's another thing, is God actually caused the ravine now to be inhabitable for Elijah. So it was God's decision to have him in the ravine, God's decision to bring him out of the ravine. But gave him that promise, gave him that command, so he had those two things to go on.
That's really well put. Because it's like is it in the eagle's nest that the mother's going to disturb the chicks at the right time, right? Bring thorns basically in and leave the nest later. And so that's a picture comes to me as you were talking. Yeah. So he's disturbing his nest and saying, look, you're going to have to enter a time of uncertainty now, and I think that is really hard for us, and I think people can really get stuck in safety, even though it's a ravine.
Exactly. Well, I think that's why he dried the brook up, because it would have been so much easier just to stay, even though it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't, the best, obviously, the way the conditions were, but
it's safe. It's good enough.
He still had that at least. So I'm pretty sure that would be why God dried that up and why he does that in our lives. Because
for sure,
it's time to go.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you'll stay if you want to.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
There's lots of times.
The sledgehammer from heaven.
Exactly. Yeah, there's lots of times when I've been willing to just kind of stay in that safe place, and God has really had to kind of boot me out of there in order to move on to the next part of it.
And it's amazing how often we'll do that, even though it's uncomfortable, or, you're being fed scraps by birds. But because we have that one thing to cling to, it's like, nope. Yeah. I'm holding on to this. I'm staying here.
Absolutely.
We are wired that way, aren't we? Yeah. Like we evaluate and we're looking at the risk, and many times we're just kind of waiting for that risk to diminish and go away. Yeah. We're waiting so that the next step is safe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the map behind us, you see where he had to travel. He had to go from in this area of Israel all the way up out of the north, and actually out of Israel to a town or a place called Zarephath. And the interesting thing about this is he had to go through all kinds of risk here because everybody's on the hunt for this guy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they want, there's a death sentence on this guy and a bounty.
Right.
And he's going, actually, Jezebel, the queen, who's behind the threat, her hometown is Zarephath. God is sending him to Jezebel's hometown. Now, do you think that they just might know who this guy is, right?
Wow.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when God commanded, he's probably like,
What?
pardon?
And don't forget, in this it says, and I'll bring this part of the story up. We're going to cover the rest in the week, but that I'm prepared a widow to look after you.
Right. So, thanks God for all this comfort and guarantees. I really appreciate that. That sounds really appealing.
So insecurity, uncertainty, all the way around, right?
Right. But that tough territory is where a miracle is needed, right? That is what the ground is laid for, is a miracle. If he was just comfortable this whole way or safe this whole way, there is no growth there. There is no need for faith. He needs faith in this situation. His faith has to be so strong. His promise, even, as you said, it really doesn't sound that appealing, but he trusts, okay, God's going to provide for me there as well, so I'm going to go. And how far did you say it was from the...
100 miles or,
right.
Like it's a long ways.
Yeah.
A bit of a skip, yeah.
Yeah.
A good chance to get found out.
No kidding. No kidding. And when we were discussing this earlier, Angela, if you remember, you mentioned that, there's times in life where everything seems super comfortable and everything's going great. And in those times, it's kind of like you almost have to question, like, okay, am I like walking with you, God? Because things seem really easy right now. Because as you said, oftentimes if we want our faith to grow or we want the miracle, then we got to go through these things that are not comfortable or not easy.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Let's talk about CPR a bit.
Sure.
Command, promise, risk.
Right.
Because it's each phase, and at this phase it comes out again.
Yeah.
The command, very simple. He just says this, the word of the Lord came to him, go at once to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. There's the command. I have commanded a widow in that place to supply you with food. There's the promise. And here is the risk. So he went.
Right.
Boom.
So, this is, you find it over and over in the scriptures, right?
Yeah.
Lots of stories.
There's a lot of stories like that. I mean, you just think about Noah building the ark, you think about David going to Goliath. You think about Moses even going back to Egypt to talk to Pharaoh to set the people free and then leading the people the way he did, in particular through the Red Sea. But all throughout Scripture, we're looking at this situation where God gives a command and a promise, and it's up to us, it's up to them to take that risk.
And we're at that risk phase right here. So he's got to actually obey here. Obedience is a key at each phase, right? And so he obeyed to go to the ravine. Now there's a new obedience. Leave the ravine and move into uncertainty, move out of safety into uncertainty. Wherever that you want to grow, like in life, you have to understand uncertainty can't be avoided. If you want to grow something in yourself, or you want to grow a relationship, or you want to grow a financial thing, uncertainty will be part, not without a doubt, will be part of that journey.
Yeah.
And so when we try to deal with uncertainty and turn it into certainty, we're moving outside faith. And whereas where growth that's based on uncertainty is, I'm just going to obey here. I'm going to believe the promise.
Exactly.
Take the risk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that here where it just so simply says, so he went to Zarephath. Like, I know for me, this process may be a bit longer. There may have been a few other words involved in it, like you said, trying to take uncertainty and turn it into some sort of certainty within my own power before I take, obey. But that's not what God's commanded. That doesn't require faith if you're able to make it all certain on your own.
Exactly.
Yeah, it could have also read, so he decided to stay and died of thirst.
Yeah. So he toiled for weeks and weeks. And
yeah, and he could evaluate that and say, yeah, but if I go out there, I'll die by the sword.
That's right.
So it's sort of, either way, but this is where his whole thing had been changed on the inside too. He is obeyed at each phase.
He was ready. Yeah.
And faith begins with obedience. And I think we'd say to this to you to finish this up tonight is, look, there may be areas of your life that you're waiting for, I don't know, the right signals to step out and go.
Yeah.
Probably good to stop that process. I will work on this relationship if.
Yes.
I will, I will do this, take this part of the journey I should, if. Mm-hmm. And those ifs are really dangerous. Yeah. Because they can be you trying to turn uncertainty into certainty and missing the whole faith thing. And then, see, God's territory involves you being insecure. Mm. It involves you trusting him. It involves you dealing with the uncertainty and trusting him for the outcome. So command, obey, promise, believe, risk. You have to take that action. That's your faith stepping out and moving into this phase. So that's for today. I think you got lots to think about, and take a look at your journey. Where do you need to get out of the ravine? Brook's drying up anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
God bless.